see Chuck is here already. Okay. We have a few people here. Welcome. And Casper, if you will, or I can do it from here actually, I think.
Hey, Miss D.
Okay, honey, I hear you. I just need to see you now.
Okay.
And I think I can turn it on from here, maybe. Maybe you have to do it. Do you see where the little video camera is down at the bottom of your screen?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, no, I don't see. Okay, start video. Here we go.
There we go.
Yay.
There you are.
There you are.
It's so nice to see your.
Wonderful to see you, although at a distance.
At a distance, absolutely. That's the only way any of us are doing it anymore.
Incredible. You know, from a kid who grew up in the 50s,
Okay.
it's remarkable.
I will ask everyone to please turn off your microphones. Casper and I should be the only ones with our mics on, please. And let me see, I can go through this and actually do it myself, I think.
Ooh.
I need to have mics up. So welcome to everyone. We have with us today Casper Rawls, Rick Casper Rawls. Nobody ever uses Rick, do they?
Well, down here where I live, they do. They actually call me Richard. That's what I was called in grade school. And then junior high and high school was Rick. And then Austin was Casper.
Right. Well, so let's start right off with that. How did you get that nickname?
Casper?
Yes.
Was nicknamed, I was hanging around with these guys who moved to Austin from Mississippi called the Howlers. It was way before it became Omar and the Howlers. There was the group. Omar was just one of the members of the band, and they all had nicknames. Omar, the drummer, was named Crow, and Uncle Arky was the guitar player. So Bobby Field, R.S. Field, my dear friend, came up with a nickname for me, which was Casper Goliath, because I'm a big guy. So, and then everybody started calling me Casper.
Wow. I had no idea that's even where it came from. In all these years, I've never asked.
We used to hang around at the Rome Inn where I first met those guys. And a lot of people probably in Austin thought I was one of the band because I kind of looked like them. And I just adored those guys, and I hung around with them wherever they went. They even gave me another nickname because I went to all their gigs and whatever needed. I helped them carry stuff in, sell T-shirts or whatever merchandise they wanted to sell. They call me Mr. Benny, their social worker.
Oh my God. So how long have you actually been playing?
I got my first guitar when I was in 3rd grade. My dad took me to this toy store. He was in the Air Force, and we didn't have a lot of money. And he said, okay, son, go for it. You can have any toy in the store. So I picked a guitar, a little cowboy guitar with a cowboy, and, you know, proceeded to not learn how to play it. I did my best, but, you're 8 or 9 years old. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then when I was in the 6th grade, my parents bought me an electric guitar and an amplifier. That's when I knew that was it.
Mm-hmm. And so what was your first paid gig?
I hooked up with these fellas around here in Helotes named, man, you'll find this theme through my life. 2 brothers named the Ayala brothers. One was a drummer, one was a bass player, and their mother was a music teacher. We used to practice at their home on a scenic loop road, and she made us tune to the piano by ear, and we had to play with a metronome. So we had a little band that would play either before the other big bands, or sometimes we played on our own. We played quinceañeras for the coming out of the Mexican American ladies, and we played the Animals and Ventures and stuff like that. The other guys played the cumbias, and dance music, but I got the gig because I had an electric guitar, I had an amplifier, and I could play the lick to Dirty Water. Bop, 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 bop. At that time, it was the rage. I mean,
Right.
we played that song for 20 minutes. It had a bad word supposedly in it. I wasn't singing, but it had a supposed bad word, and that was like the yeah. So we did that for quite a while. But not we didn't play every weekend or anything. It was just more of a hobby kind of thing while we were in school. So
Uh-huh.
that's when I first got paid. We play little places that have parties and school churches and schools and stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, I come from that same era, and Dirty Water was one of the songs that every band played.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, my favorite band at the time was a bunch of high school boys, the Stowaways in Plattsburgh,
Right
New York.
on.
And that was one of their songs too.
There you go. It's universal. It
That
was easy.
Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, I think we played
Isn't
that.
that weird? Little Red Riding Hood. Oh my gosh.
I know another big one was the House of the Rising Suns. Watch
Oh
that
yes.
Animals. That was like,
Yep.
ooh, if you can play that, it's got like 4 or 5 chords in it, man.
So, Casper, you have such a long and storied career, uh, and you have really been able to meet a lot of who I assume would probably have been your heroes.
Absolutely. I've been very
Uh,
blessed.
and so, you've actually been responsible for bringing many of them to the Continental Club.
My honor, believe me.
And so one of the things I want to talk about is uh, I want to talk about your history with the Buck Owens Birthday Bash,
Sure.
which lasted for 20 years.
25.
Oh, 25. Yes,
Yeah.
of course, 25. Yeah.
That's when we got to 25. I was like, we've been doing this longer than Buck was on Capitol Records. And Tom and I kind of just came to this. We didn't even have to say anything. It was like, yeah, time to put it to bed, because it was just, it had run its course, and
Right.
it's one of
And
those
Buck
things.
was gone.
Buck was gone, and the last, not straw, but the last thing that made me like, yeah, maybe it's time. I called Willie Cantu, which I've been bugging Willie for years, the drummer and all the
Uh-huh.
original. He was one of the original, in the original band that was most famous.
Mhm.
And he would always say, no, I don't want to come, because Buck's not going to be there. And I said, well, man, we've got Tom Brumley's been here, Doyle Holly's been here,
Mhm.
everybody but you. He was like, no, I'm not really into it. So I called finally he said, hey, look, whatever you want, we'll treat it like a gig. We'll pay you good money, airplane, hotel, everything. And he was like, nah. I was like, okay, that's about time.
Yep.
But with Buck, I wrote to Buck when Don Rich died. I wrote him a letter,
Mhm.
and he wrote me back. He said, man, thanks for writing. We're all shook up, and, we're going to carry on and so forth. And then I saw Buck later on when he came back with Dwight. My dad had a satellite dish. It's still here at the house. And he took this magazine about satellite television, and there was Buck Owens talking about how he was getting into satellite TV. So I wrote him again, said, hey, Buck, what are you doing, man? And he wrote back. He said, hey, I'm thinking about recording again. I'm doing some gigs with these kids. Stay tuned. And then I got to be friends and play in the band with Dan Fort. He had a band called Tasco Del Rey. He was also his name at Guitar Player magazine. And he was kind enough to let me tag along to go interview Buck when he was re-emerging with Dwight and everything. We went out to Buck's office and sat with him for an hour and a half, a couple of hours, talking to him. And it was very nice to meet him. He was very gracious and cordial. So I didn't think anything about that. And then a little while later, we recorded an EP. We were going to Paris, France on a tour with the Leroy brothers. And Charlie Sexton helped produce an EP, and we cut one of Buck's rockabilly songs called Rhythm and Blues. He had it under the name Corky Jones, because at the time he couldn't release rockabilly and country. It was like he'd be blackballed. So we cut that song, and I guess either by them having to license it from Buck somehow Buck heard it, and he called me on the phone. He said, "Hey, man, I love this record. I'm wearing it out, or CD, whatever, and I love your guys' version of it." And he goes, "Man, who are you?" I said, "Oh, Buck, I've been out to see you for the Guitar Player magazine. I wrote you those letters in the '70s." He goes, "Holy cow, you're that guy." To put two and two together, that was me playing on the CD, and it was me that came to see him with Dan Ford.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, that was a huge Buck Owens fan. So that's how we met. And then later, Tom and I were playing in different bands, and we were like, "Hey, let's do it. What do you say about doing a Buck Owens night?" And we're like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so that's how that started. And we started writing to Buck. We sent him the set list. We sent him who played, the keys, and it really touched him.
I know that it was incredibly successful, and it was a fundraiser, in fact, for the Children's Resource Center.
It started with Children's Advocacy Center, and then later it became the Center for Child Protection.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think the last they told me it was between $70,000 and $80,000 were raised for those kids. So we saved a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really amazing. I know that that we were extremely fortunate the year that Buck actually showed up.
Yes, you know, we'd been writing to him. I'd call out there and try to get through to him. I didn't know him that well then, and they were like, "I don't count on it." You know, Buck usually goes on vacation at that time, his birthday. He goes up to Carmel and hangs out. Funny story about him going to Carmel. He goes with his sons, and they all talk about business, and they're all like, "Buck, this is what we ought to do, man. This is how we ought to do the business now. This is how it ought to go." And Buck goes, "Well, y'all talk all amongst you all you want. Go ahead and do what I told you to do." That's how that worked out. So Buck was tickled, and I guess he got a hold of Jim Lauderdale, and Jim Lauderdale told him it was cool. He had come before, and he probably talked to Ray Benson in there somewhere because I'd been bugging Ray to come, but Ray was always gone in the summer. He was out touring. And so I'm sure he got the word that was like, these guys aren't flakes, you know. And he showed up, and Steve got him a motorhome to hang out in. And it was just a very special time. And he always talked about that as watching his life pass before his eyes, because he remembered what he was doing when he wrote all those songs. He said, some of those songs, we only played them one time in the studio. I forgot about that one. It's like, well, we love them. All those songs on the records, and some of the artists would pick obscure because the known songs were always covered by other people. So that really touched him. It touched him to see the young kids, you know, rejuvenating his music. And he flipped over the Derailers. He actually had tears in his eyes watching the Derailers.
Yep.
He could walk right up front, and it was just like, you know, that was me.
Yeah. Tony Villanueva moving away was very sad
It was for us,
the Derailers, and for all of us who were fans of the Derailers at that time.
Yes.
Because they had that real Bakersfield thing going on, you know.
They had it all going on. They had all kinds. They could play Beatles. They could play, I think they covered a Prince song. Very talented fellas. And one of the stories I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, was Buck was getting ready to help them when their next album was coming up.
I had heard that as well.
You know, shoot a video out there. Buck built this, because of coming to our place, he saw how much fun he had. He was already building a restaurant kind of dinner theater thing, but he went all out. He built the thing, rigged up for TV, studio. I mean, all you had to do is come and plug your satellite truck up. The camera's already there. He had a 24-track recording studio in there. And so I think the Derailers were going to go out and do something with him out there in that regard.
And he was able to actually take up the idea of the birthday bash, and he did it at his own Crystal Palace.
Did it? They still do it too. They still do it in his honor. And I went to the very first one. I think Steve was there. Steve came out, Baby Gabby, and I know Dave Alvin was there, and a bunch of folks showed up to the grand opening. And we ended up on, you know, I ended up on stage with Buck and Marty Stewart and Dwight Yoakam playing all those old songs.
That's
It was just a
awesome.
hoot, along with Buck's band. And those guys, they're so cool. They've seen it all.
Right. And now Buck sent you a guitar.
He did. It showed up the year before he came. Red, white, and blue acoustic guitar. I was just
Yep.
speaking with Webb Wilder about this, that it was addressed from his sister, Dorothy Owens. And it came to my house, Dorothy Owens. I don't know Dorothy Owens. I opened it up, and there it is, red, white, and blue, and it had a pick guard engraved, to Casper might see you August 12th, 1995, or whatever, Buck
Uh-huh.
Owens.
And in fact, you had already received the guitar, but on the night that he played, didn't he present it to you officially?
No, we had it up in the rafters. We put
Oh,
it up
that's what
there.
it was.
Yeah,
Okay.
we put it up there in the rafters, and I was back there in the back when I was on a break talking with Buck, and said, "You recognize that guitar?" Oh yes, son, I recognize that guitar. He was so kind to me. He always, whenever I spoke with him, he would always tell me how much he loved my guitar playing. I mean, he made it a point to say that. He
Uh-huh.
wrote me letters sometimes, notes. If you had heard something I played on, or I know it was you, son, on this record. I really loved hearing that.
Wow.
Just
That's
really
awesome.
moved, just really moved me. I still got some of the notes.
Before we move on to another famous person you've been involved with, James Burton,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about your history with bands here in Austin. I know
Oh,
you had a
mercy.
very long tenure with the Leroy Brothers,
Yes, ma'am.
and then you did move into a solo career that
Mm-hmm.
landed you 3 different residencies at the Continental Club, one of
Yes,
which would still be going on if we weren't shut down because of COVID right now.
I would certainly hope so. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. How did you end up, well, who did you play with in Austin before Leroy Brothers?
I moved to Austin to go to UT in 1973.
What was your major?
Journalism. A lot of people don't know this, but I was the sports editor of our high school paper
Oh,
called the Rampage, John Marshall Rampage. And so I came up to UT to study the girls from high school. I mean, journalism. And so I was doing that, and I went to, this is before Ray Hennick's music. I went to Straight and found a little card, needed a guitar player, called the guys up. They were called the River City Rounders, and they were pure country. And we played, I tried out with them and said, oh, let's give it a try. Because I really wasn't a country guy. I could play that stuff, but because I'd listened to James for so long. And we played the Skyline Club up on North Lamar when it was still there,
huh?
and the Dessau Hall way up north. We had a big tree in the middle of the club, growing. And I don't remember the names of the fraternal organization. It was called SPJST. I don't ever know what that meant. But anyway, they had dances on the weekends, and
Uh-huh.
VFW had country dances. And these were like 5-hour gigs, But golly, I learned a lot, and I got to learn my instrument on that style of music, and had fun. I got to drink beer, which I was drinking a lot of back then. And so I played with those guys for a good while. Then I jumped into another band, and this is a funny story, because at Sammy Allred's funeral, I ran into the steel player from the band called the Country Sounds, Neil Kahonik, and Dwayne Hamilton was the drummer. And we went to because we couldn't remember anything about the band. We went to Mr. White. He was at Sammy's funeral, said, Mr. White, you remember this band we were in called Country Sounds? And he goes, yeah, I remember you guys. You played there a lot. I said, what do you remember about us? Because we can't remember a thing. And he was kind of like, well, I don't remember a whole lot about you fellas. He didn't remember either. So we played there. It wasn't like every week or anything like that. It was maybe once a couple of months. And then because I was hanging around with Omar, I got hooked in with Omar, and some other folks had moved from Mississippi. Susie Elkins, Webb Wilder, Jerry Felton, Farrow, and Rick Zachary. They had a band called Everready. And for some reason, they wanted me to be in their band. It was a great band without me. But anyway, I joined with them. in the later 70s, I guess mid 70s, 76, 77. And we made a go of it. And then I got a job offer to go to the Rio Grande Valley, a full-time guitar playing position, playing in a country dance hall, 3 or 4, 5 nights a week. It's called the Short Line Station. So that's when I left Austin in 77. And then to get back to the Austin portion of the program, or do you want to hear the part about the short line? It's pretty involved.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, that was a real country dance hall, a big one, back when the Urban Cowboy thing was revving up. We would play our show, and then we would end up opening up for a lot of famous people that came through there. And we do that on the weekends. And the weekdays, we had another band called Chuck Up and the Upchucks. And we would play across the street at the beer joint where the truck drivers came that haul produce out of the valley. And we would at Time's Up Chuck, we were drinking and playing country, and then we'd finish that, and oftentimes we'd get in the car and go over to Reynosa, Mexico. And if we played music, brought our guitars and played music, they keep giving us drinks till 4 in the morning or something. And also in that band was Denny Cletus Blakely, who later played with a lot of famous people.
uh-huh.
But Norman Swanson was the band leader, fantastic honky tonk, pianist. He could play anything. Just great band leader, cool guy to work for. It was going on. So we did that for quite a while.
Oh, shoot. I just muted you, Casper. You should be able to,
There, better?
yes,
Okay.
my mistake.
So after the short line, that kind of fizzled out, and I kind of got homesick for Austin. I came back to Austin, and R.S. Field and Webb Wilder wanted to start a band. But I got an offer to go on the road. I was walking by this place over by Tri Towers, and a buddy of mine I went to high school with said, "Hey, you want to build some speakers in your spare time?" I was like, "Yeah, I need a job." So I started building speakers, and then the summertime came, and they had a tour coming up, and one of the guys couldn't go. So I went out on tour with the Styx band, setting up speakers and so forth. And that led to a year and a half of doing that, riding on buses, and big time. Those guys are huge.
Right.
And but then after that was over, and it was quite a time, a lot of stories in there, I moved back to Austin. And then they decided they were going to do the band Bobby Field and Webb Wilder in Mississippi. I moved to Mississippi for 2 years with Susie Elkins, Webb Wilder. Gene Brandon was a drummer. Gene went on to play with Omar.
Uh-huh.
Bruce Tennant was a singer who lives in Austin now, is a brilliant animator, like, Pixar and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Hag was the bass player. So we did that for 2 years in Mississippi. And we did all kinds of playing all over the Mid-South, toured everywhere, played Tipitina's the night after Stevie played. And there were feathers from his thing, when he wore the headdress and broken. It was like, well, Stevie's been here. It was hilarious. And we had a great time with Webb and Susie. Made an EP over there with Horace Field producing, and we were going to try to make a go of it in Nashville, but some of us wanted to go to Nashville, some of us didn't. So it kind of took a split there. And Susie ended up going to Austin, me too. And I got to Austin in '85.
And those Mississippi days, is that when you first met Omar?
No, I met Omar at the Rome Inn back in '76 when they first got there. They first got to Austin. And I became a disciple of that group, the Howlers. I would just follow them everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Like I mentioned before, people thought I was probably one of the band.
Right.
And they let me sit in. That's where I first discovered the Telecaster. I had a Les Paul. Up until then, I was playing a black Les Paul.
Oh.
And my mother had bought me for, I guess maybe my graduation or some special event. She bought me a beautiful black Les Paul guitar, and I continued to learn on that. And but then I played Danny Dozier's Telecaster, and was, it's like, whoa, this is way different, but it's pretty cool. And then down in the valley, we got a chance to play with Merle Haggard, and we were the opening group. And after we did our sound check and Merle did his sound check, we were just hanging around, and Roy Nichols wanted to see my Les Paul. He wanted to check it out. So he played my Les Paul, and he let me play his Telecaster. So it was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. So we played guitars all afternoon and got proceedingly drunk in the afternoon. And it came time to play, and Merle was not happy with us. He kind of forgave Roy, but he was looking, because I was like 19 or 20 years old. He was like, but we made it through the show and everything was just fine. But he was pretty hot.
And there is another thing I want to get into later, is talking about B-benders.
Yes, well, sure.
But right now, we have a question from Larry, who's viewing.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in, Larry. And he says, how did it come about that you started playing with Doyle Bramhall Sr.?
That's a little later in the story. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. I got to Austin again in 1985, and a lot of people still thought I was from Mississippi because originally, because I'd hung out with Omar.
Uh-huh.
I had been living in Mississippi for 2 years, so a lot of people in town thought I grew up in Mississippi, which I wish was true, but I grew up in Helotes, Texas, right next to John T. Flores Country Store, famous place where Willie Nelson played. Uh-huh. And that's where I live now. So I got to, in 85, the Leroy brothers called me, actually in 1984. We did, the guitarist, Don, was leaving the group, and I guess it was maybe an audition or something before they got Evan, or maybe they were talking to Evan too, Evan Johns. Mm-hmm. And we did a gig down on 6th Street at the Ritz Theater, and they had cleared everything out and put sand in it like it was a beach. And it was horrible. Now, I don't know if it affected my playing enough it was just like, I did not want to be there. It was ridiculous to me. It was just like, no. So anyway, that didn't work out that year, and they got Evan in the group. A year later, I get a call from their manager, Gary Rice. Hey, the guys want to talk to you about being in the band. I was like, well, you're not playing any more sandbars, are you? And I was like, yeah, we'll give it a try. So I went up and rehearsed for them. Our first gig was at Liberty Lunch, and by then, Evan had left. I was replacing Evan. Joe Dora had bowed out, I guess, to go on to school or whatever he was doing, maybe with another band, I don't really know. But the band had been gone from Austin for a while. They'd been in Europe and touring before that. So when they showed up back in July at Liberty Lunch, it was their first time back in town in a while. The only time I have heard an entire audience gasp, because we showed up and there's only 4 of us up there, and I'm the new guy. Right. They didn't know who I was. It was like 4 guys, different band. I had the B-bender. I was playing a few Ricky Nelson songs, maybe a Buck Owens song. It was like, whoa, this is way different. So it was, that's where that started in 1985. And it blossomed into 25 years of going around the world. A fantastic band, unbelievable gigs all over the place.
Hang on just a minute.
Sure.
Your video. So how long were you with Leroy Brothers?
About 25 years, 24 years. And it got to where, no offense to the guys, I love them, they're my brothers, and the greatest musicians I've ever worked with and for. And I'm so grateful to them for letting me join up and hang around with them all over the place. It got to where I couldn't be there because I was busy with other things. The band, the Leroy Brothers, weren't as busy, towards the end when I played with them. Uh-huh. 6 or 7 times a year, maybe. And so I got busy doing other things. I joined up with Earl Pull Ball. He had a regular gig at Saxon Pub, right, with the Cosmic Americans every Friday for 2.5 years or more. And by then I was doing Planet Casper.
Uh-huh.
It was a full-time deal almost. And I started playing with Dol Bramhall. And Dol, when he worked a lot.
Right.
So it was not fair for me to be turning down the guys for their Leroy Brothers gig. So I, basically said I'm going to leave the group. So
Uh-huh. Um, and Leroy Brothers actually went through several changes of guitar players over the years,
yes,
but you were with them the longest.
I'd probably say that's a fact. Yeah, I was.
And so it was noticeable when you were gone.
Oh gosh, it shouldn't have been. Shouldn't have been. But you know, um, when we toured really hard the first 8, 9, 10 years,
Mhm.
we jumped in the van and went everywhere. I mean, Mike Buck had these beautiful cassette tapes of music, and we wouldn't say a word. We'd drive to LA, say about 3 words, because he had this beautiful music we play, and it was just fantastic. And Steve, tremendous singer and songwriter,
Right.
and Jack Newhousel's my favorite bass player. I just love those days. But at one point, it got to where Steve and Mike were having kids, and so we couldn't do that much anymore. We
Right.
went to Australia and New Zealand, and got more condensed as to what we were doing. But I didn't have all that going on, so I needed to work. And I was very fortunate to be able to jump in with Chaparral, Two Hoots and a Holler,
Mhm.
and Libby Bosworth, Callie Willis,
Right.
Tracy Lynn, and it was just, a beautiful time for me to go play the Continental a lot with all these groups. In
Uh-huh.
fact, when my life passes before my eyes, I think about 51% of it is going to be on the Continental Club stage. And grateful for that.
And we're lucky
Blessed.
that you can say that too.
I'm so blessed. Yeah. So, and Mike had his other band called the Naughty Ones.
Right.
Steve went on to play with Charles Thibodeau, and no hard feelings and nothing,
Hmm.
weird, because I love those guys, and it just got to where I couldn't do it anymore because it wouldn't be fair.
Leroy Brothers was the first band I ever saw at Antone's
Wow.
in December of 1987.
I would have been there.
Yep.
We played Antone's quite a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of times with no people. It's the same with the club. We played
Uh-huh.
midnight shift at either of those clubs, but you
Right.
got to meet some very interesting people.
Indeed. uh, so now, since you've been doing the solo
Yes.
show,
Hmm.
you've actually released a CD, which is phenomenal, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
And you wrote songs. And I don't think that many people recognize you for being a songwriter, but you
Wow.
are.
Thank you for saying that. I write songs. I'm not a songwriter. I write at songs. I've been very lucky to have them recorded. Tony Price recorded one, Blue River. So I write at songs, and I'm very appreciative that that album was made by everybody because everybody donated to it. And I asked them what they wanted to hear on it, and they said, "Well, we want to hear some of the songs you sing at your happy hour, but surprise us, And so I did. That's how I approached it. I know everybody would want to hear Angeline, and so we recorded that a different way than we recorded it with the Leroy Brothers. The Leroy Brothers version has Doug Somm singing harmony, and that was a real raucous deal with Speedy bringing in Doug. The great story I tell about that was Doug talked the whole time when he walked into the studio till he left. The only time he stopped talking was when he was singing. We should have recorded his talking.
I know that there was a big fundraiser for getting your album done at
Yes.
Leanne Atherton's
Yes.
Barn Dance, and that was a big deal. And hang on just one second, I've got something to show you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening in.
This sits on my piano permanently. I don't know if, I think it's going to be hard to see it. But
Can't see it.
It is a framed, uh, it is a framed little note that was at the cashier's station right at the front that said, Dianne Scott's money is no good here.
Yes, right. My orders.
It's on my piano.
That was a wonderful time that everybody came together for the fundraiser. Leanne basically donated her place, where they had
Right.
the barn dance. And, everybody, Ollie Rose Green was phenomenal in organizing all that. Brian Allred, now our dearly departed friend Donna Allred, and now Marshall and Dorinda's gone. It's just amazing to wake up and hear all the people that are leaving us. But at that time, it was a very special deal with Shelley King, and David Grissom came to play, and everybody helped me raise the money for the record. And I got to do it exactly how I wanted to do it, with Horace Field coming down to produce. We did it at my friend Stuart Sullivan's place when he was still over in South Lamar.
Right.
And I got to do the songs that I preferred to do. Bobby agreed. And he had some input about all of that, but it was pretty well. I love every note of that record, and you can still buy it from me.
And actually, how can people access your merch?
Go to my website, casperrawls.com. I've got t-shirts, hats, CD, whatever you want, whatever you need.
And can people make donations to you?
I would prefer they make donations to the club.
Well, thank you very much.
I know there's a fund for all that.
There is. It's 100% to the employees.
Yes, that's where you need to give the money.
And it goes, and you can find that link at www.continentalclub.com/closed. That banner at the top of our page is where it directs you to our tip jar. And also, Steve, the owner, has very graciously given us 100% of the profits of any merch sales as well.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Well, there you go.
So for every t-shirt sold, we all get a piece of the action.
Good for y'all.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It's very nice.
Yeah. Steve is so incredible, man. He's been so good to me over the years. Just incredible. I went to the club. This is an aside. When Steve had to serve food, and I went there one afternoon, Saturday afternoon, I think, and he had the black and white TV back then. I think it was black and white, little TV, and they had a car race going on, like Formula car race. And there was another guy eating, so I was sitting there eating my sandwich, and we started talking about cars, and he was like way into these cars. He was like telling me all the, ins and out of these race cars, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And so he finished, and I'm still eating. He goes, oh, I'll catch you later, man. And Steve walks up and goes, hey, you just had lunch with Christopher Cross. I had no idea who he was. At that time, a huge recording artist,
Right, right. And at that time, was C-Boy cooking?
At time, yes, Steve was here, yeah, yep. He was there, and he remembered me from the room in.
And unfortunately, the kitchen at the Continental Club didn't last very long.
Oh, not very long.
Because people that would maybe come in for lunch, business people, didn't want to smell the cigarette smoke and the stale beer from the night before.
Yeah, it was pretty prominent.
And the people that actually had been there the night before weren't tempted to come back until nighttime.
Well, it was an experience for sure.
So Nancy Heskin-Rackness says, we love the CD, Casper.
Thank you. God bless you.
And Kimberly Culver says, hi, and miss you, Casper.
Miss everybody. I miss you, Miss D. I miss everybody. I miss Lisa Cohen. When we changed to Thursdays from Tuesdays, Lisa was our bartender, and this is the longest I've been without seeing her in forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I only see anybody on Facebook anymore because since I am at high risk, I can't really go much of anywhere. I go grocery shopping about once every 10 days to 2 weeks, and I choose what time I go, and I go to a store that doesn't have a whole lot of traffic.
Yes.
you know, and my only other outing is 3 days a week. I go over to Walmart where I feed a, a feral cat, and it's at the garden center, and I
Oh,
feed him outside, so I don't even have to go in.
wow. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for doing that.
Uh, so now uh, let's talk a little bit more about uh, your famous friend, James Burton.
James is in Nashville a lot these days. I just spoke to him this weekend. I tried to rope him into joining us today, but he's in the studio mixing a. Last fall they did a 80th birthday celebration.
Uh-huh.
Filmed it, and he's editing it down. And they have some interest from ABC Television. He had some really famous
Wonderful.
people, like the guy from Queen, the guitar player.
Uh-huh. Brian May.
Yeah, Joe Walsh, all those guys. And
Uh-huh.
so he's busy doing that. Otherwise, I was going to rope him
I
in.
do have him on my list to try and rope him in for one of these.
Well, good luck trying to
I
get that
know.
guy to land for an hour is incredible. That guy, he's like a teenager. But James and I have been friends for a long, long time. I met him in. I've been meeting him through the years on the road, and just like bowing down, telling him how great he was, and he was. But I met him for real at the NAMM show in Nashville, Tennessee, in 1995. Gene Parsons, who invented the string bender with Clarence White, had brought me up to Nashville to demonstrate a new guitar they had made. It was going to be a production model, a B-bender, where it was going to cost less money, easier to mass produce. And so I played all weekend. That was a phenomenal weekend for me because when I got to town, Gene picked me up with a guy named Eddie Tickner. I don't know if you know who Eddie was. Eddie was the guy that glued Graham Parsons and Emmylou together, all the Brito brothers. He was like a
Uh,
manager, behind the scenes kind of mover and shaker guy.
uh-huh.
And he kind of did all that. And he was in the car. I was like, "You're Eddie Tickner." Because I read about him. You never met him. And he was like, "Oh," and we were getting in the car to go see Albert Lee. He goes, "Oh man, I know who you are. I dig your guitar playing, but my favorite is Albert Lee. We're going to go see Albert Lee. I just can't believe he moves his hands like that." And so we go to this little club in Nashville to see Albert Lee. And of course, first thing I do is go up to Albert and it's like, "Man, I love your bender playing on Sweet Little Lisa." He goes, "Oh, thanks a lot, man." I said, "You got a bender with you?" And he goes, "No, no, mate. I don't carry the bender anymore with me." It's like, "Oh, cool, cool." I got his address because I had some stuff I wanted to send him, some Buck Owens stuff. I was like, I knew he was a big fan of Buck Owens.
Mhm.
And as an aside, I actually got to introduce Albert to Buck Owens and also to James Burton's mother. So that ties all this in together. So me and Gene are sitting back there with Eddie and watching Albert. First note, he plays a bender lick. He had a secret bender in that guitar. He didn't tell anybody because I guess Ernie Ball was like, didn't want it known. And we were like, "Oh, busted. You got a bender in there." I got him later after the show. I was like, "Yeah, you had a bender in there." But anyway, that weekend I played guitar all weekend long, and I look up and there's James Burton watching me play. I was playing a red Telecaster, which he played in the early days. And I was like, at the end of the weekend, he came up and said, "Hey, man, I dig what you're doing. Here's my information. Give me a call sometime. We got to get together, do some picking." I was like, unbelievable. And also that same time, who came up to me was Phil Everly. Phil said, "Man, we got a new line of strings. I love your guitar playing. I'm going to send you some strings." So I got to meet Phil Everly. I got him to show me how they played the Wake Up Little Susie. He said, "Well, I didn't play in the studio, Ray Eddington did, but here's how I did it because I did it better than Don." He went and got a capo, which I still have to this day, and capoed up the guitar and showed me how he played it.
Wow.
So that was a great weekend for me. I was still playing with Kelly a lot then, and it was like, wow, man, what a life. And so I got back home and didn't think anything about it. We just gotten this thing called caller ID. It was a little box. You add it into your telephone line. It wasn't built in. And one day I look at the caller ID. It says James Burton. I was like, no way. And it was James. "Hey, man, why didn't you ever call me, man? What's going on?" And we became fast friends ever since.
Right.
to this day. He's like my big brother. And we recorded a bunch with Tony Price. I've been up to do his shows up in Shreveport to help him and actually play on some of them.
Hmm.
And just everything you think about your hero times 10.
I think James is just the best, and it's like one of my favorite memories of you and James at the Continental Club was actually the night that y'all walked in the back door and you had a special guest with you, and I got to meet Albert Lee.
That was a fun time. You know, Albert was in town recording with James and Junior Brown. They were going to do an album together. And they recorded, we were going to actually get those guys to play with us. We brought extra guitars that day to my happy hour. And they got tied up in the studio and got there late, but I'm so glad they came by. And,
Oh, wow. It was amazing to have both James Burton and Albert Lee in the Continental Club at the same time. It was like unbelievable.
And you know, it was Will Dupuis band playing and Willie Pipkin. And
Yes.
those guys were just like saucer-eyed, you know, because
Yep.
James are sitting out there watching you.
There's no mistaking Albert Lee when he's in a room either.
I've been trying to get him to come to play. You know, we did it when James hurt his foot. We did a benefit show, and we had Albert booked and everything lined up, but his father passed away. So instead of getting on the plane to come to Austin, he got on the plane to go to England. And so that was that.
And so James has actually played at our Hot Rod show at the Travis County Expo Center.
Many times.
The Lone Star Roundup, which is sponsored by the Continental's Classic Car Club, the Continentals with a K. And so that's always been really thrilling to have James come to town so frequently. And of course, that never would have happened if it weren't for you.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, but my pleasure to be involved with that. But you never know with James. He might have been down here looking at cars and wanted to play.
But I doubt he'd have been on stage.
Well, we'll hopefully get him back. And his schedule is all over the place, believe it or not. You know, he's 80 years old.
Right.
And he's like working harder than most people I know that are half his age.
Well, and while we're on the subject of James Burton, I also want to give a plug to the James Burton Foundation.
Absolutely.
If y'all have any money that you can throw at anything, this is one of the premier nonprofits or not-for-profit. I don't know. Is it a nonprofit?
I think so. Yes, ma'am.
That you can really support because they provide instruments for school children.
And hospitals too.
And hospitals, yes. And all of that is so important. People don't always realize how important music is in our schools. It improves the well-roundedness of the students and actually helps them in many other subjects.
Yes. Maybe we need to give some guitars to the city council. Remind them about music. Remind them about music. James came in one time and we went over to Dell Children's Hospital. He presented a bunch of guitars to them. Kimmy Rhodes went with us. We played and sang. And those kids didn't know who James Burton was. But their eyes were just so thankful that somebody came and played with them and they saw the guitars that, you know, they were being presented. You know, maybe one kid could go play a little bit or, you know, if he's not feeling well. And it's just a wonderful. And James does that all over the country, St. Jude, in Memphis, and he does in Shreveport a lot. So not just schools, but hospitals and the veterans. He goes to veterans organizations and presents them with guitars. And they're not, you know, they're not cheap guitars. They're actually, you can play them. I've sat in his studio and played them, you know. Wonderful.
Now, what we haven't actually talked about is what a bee bender is.
That is a subject near and dear to me. I was living in Mississippi playing with the Drapes. It was the band we had with Webb Wilder, Susie Okins, Gene Brandon, and Bruce Tennant and Mark Hag. So we played up North Mississippi, and a fellow started coming out to see us named Lewitt Thomas, who's an eccentric. I say eccentric, he might have been totally normal, I don't know. But he collected guitars, and he said he was a manager of the great blues singer Big Joe Williams, which he turned out to be. Although Big Joe called him his road agent, not his manager. And Big Joe wrote, of course, Baby Please Don't Go, a great blues song. And he was up there, and we were playing a place, and he brought me this guitar that had a bender in it. He said, I hear something in your playing that I think you could benefit by this thing. So I got it, and I was like, oh, this is really weird. It's got to pull it, and it kind of goes out of tune. So I kept it and started playing with it. And then when that band broke up and I moved back to Texas, I kept it with me. And I get a call from Blewett, like, where's my guitar, man? You moved back to Texas with my guitar. And by then I was like, well, you got to figure out how much money you want for it, because you're not getting it back. It had become part of my style, part of my playing. The way it works, in fact, I'll show you here. Let me stand up here if I can do it. Guitar I brought in. See if you can see it. This is a special guitar Gene Parsons built. Can you see it?
Kind of. I can see the top half of it.
Okay, let me back up a little bit. Better? The way it works, when you pull on the strap, it's got a little lever. See if I can show you that.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
See, it's a little, and it turns this is a prototype of an acoustic bender, one of the first ones that Gene built. In addition to all the other people I met, I got to be really good friends with Gene Parsons, who invented this with Clarence White. He played drums on the Byrds, among other things.
Uh-huh.
But when you pull the strap, it pulls the B string. We were touring a lot with the Leroy Brothers, and everywhere we go, people want to know about the B bender. So I would show it to them after the show and give them Gene's phone number and address.
Uh-huh.
So back when we still had our names in the phone book, you remember phone books,
Right.
and calling an operator, I get a call from Gene Parsons. He goes, man, who the hell are you? I'm getting all these letters from all over the world about the B bender. I don't even know who you are. So we got to be very, very good friends. We could do chords. So that's how that works. Did it show up
But
okay?
simply by changing the position of the neck on the guitar
Yes.
activates the lever which controls the bending.
The B string, right. It
Uh-huh.
turns a little wheel back here. And there's all kinds of different ones nowadays, but Gene was the first one to connect Gene and Clarence were the first one to connect the lever with the strap back in
Uh-huh.
'68. There you go. It's a
Oh,
B-bender.
cool.
And so I got that in 1981. So I've been monkeying with that thing since 1981.
Well, it's become your signature sound.
Ma'am?
It's become your signature sound.
Yes, it has now. It's part of my playing style, for
Right.
better or worse. A lot of players, think it's a gimmick or a crutch, but when it becomes integrated into the way you do what you do or how you hear the music,
I bet if they could do it as well as you, they
Oh.
wouldn't say it was a gimmick.
James said, I turned 65, so I get to take my training wheels off next year.
Gosh, you're catching up to me, Casper. I'm going to be 70 in February.
Congratulations. Awesome.
Hopefully hopefully I make it that long. As COVID stays away from me, I'll be fine. Rick Horniak says hello.
Hi there.
He misses the Planet Casper shows.
Thank you.
And Nancy confirmed that the James Burton Foundation is nonprofit.
There you go.
And oh, David, thank you. Put up the link to the Continental Club for tips. And Chuck Holly says, hi, Casper and Diane. Thanks for doing this. Can't wait to get back to the Continental.
Yeah, me either, man. It's the longest time I've been away from the club in a long time.
Yeah, me too.
Well, yeah, you. Yeah.
It'll be 28 years. On New Year's Eve, it'll be 28 years I've been working for the Continental.
Wow. Congratulations.
And this, in 28 years, this is the longest I've ever been away from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I started
Well, actually, it's 33 years because even before I was working there, that was still my hangout. So.
Yeah, sure. So 85 for me with the Leroy. So yeah.
Yeah. Lori Stevenson just asked a good question. What's the gold record behind you?
Styx gave me that record.
Nice.
And they're great guys. I had a great time working for them. Actually, the story goes with that. We did they had a charity baseball match in Shreveport, and they were getting presented their first gold record, and they got caught in weather and couldn't make it. So they had me be one of the band members.
Aww.
To accept their gold record. There you go. Their first one, actually. Now they're, probably sold 100 million records by now.
Jane Clark says, I'm so glad you have good memories of Mississippi, Casper. Wish
Absolutely.
I had known you spent time there. Would love to have talked with you about it.
Beautiful place.
And it's so good to see you again. And thank you, Diane. This is great. Well, thank you. Really glad to have everybody here. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all for watching. Yeah, Mississippi was where I met my wife, Nancy.
Is
and
it
that's
really?
Another life-changing event for the better. For me, anyway.
Yes, sir.
Hope so for her.
So this may be a personal issue that you don't choose to talk about. I don't know. But when did you quit drinking?
Oh, in Mississippi, actually, 1981. And it came to a point, in my life, I have forks in the roads, and that was a fork in the road. One way goes one way, the other,
right.
I was bad. As Ernest Tubb talked about Billy Bird, he was a great guitar player, but he was bad to drink. That was me.
Yeah.
And my time in Austin, I can't begin to imagine some of the trauma and pain I've caused other people from my drinking, because I don't remember. That part of the 70s is heavily redacted. In other words, blacked out.
Right.
And it's not a pretty picture. But I forgave myself.
Me
and
too,
I hope people,
especially in the 70s. Yeah.
I hope people forgive me for my trespasses and, move on. But yeah, 1981.
I've been sober since 86 and moved here in 87. So
Right.
No one in Austin has ever seen me drink anything except I've had NA. I can't even think of what the name of it is, but it's one of the beers anyways that's an NA. Sutter Home puts out an alcohol-free, it's actually de-alcoholized wine.
Wow.
So it's a real wine that they've proceeded to take the alcohol out of. And so I drink their champagne on New Year's Eve.
Nancy and I did that on Y2K. That was the only time I've had a drink. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had actual alcohol since 1987, or since 1986. When I quit, I was done.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, when I first moved to Austin, the town closed at midnight. It shut down at midnight, and they had just a few years earlier passed liquor by the drink, so it was wild. I mean, like, you could go in a bar, and get liquor by the drink,
Right.
as opposed to bringing your own stuff.
One of the previous operators of the Continental Club, the Groviers, they didn't have it for very long, but their children, who are now elderly adults, remember when their parents used to get arrested for selling liquor by the drink.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah. And in fact, the lady, it's a brother and sister, and the sister remembered going in with her dad, that she and her brother would go in with their dad to clean on Saturday mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And she and her brother would scavenger all the dropped coins on the floor when they were helping to clean.
Well, I might have dropped a few myself.
So Cynthia Smith-Clark is with us. And
Wonderful.
she says, hi,
Good to see you.
Casper, miss you lots, but play the CD and it helps a bit.
God bless you. And then we had a question about how I got working with Doyle.
Yes.
I was playing with Kelly a lot, and he was booking also with Davis McClarty, who was booking Kelly. And we'd always play some shows together. And Doyle was always asking me what I was doing. I said, well, I'm kind of busy with Kelly. And then I got busy with Tony. And he would, call, or he would drop me a little note in the mail. That's how we communicated back in those days before internet and all that. I mean, we didn't even have answering machines growing up. You just call people. You're lucky if you catch them at home. Anyway, it came about where I could start playing with Doyle, and once we started playing, it was pretty special.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was great.
So we're a little bit over an hour right now, but there's still a couple questions I have for you. And the first one is, what song do you wish you had written?
All of them. I probably one that Lionel Richie wrote that made a lot of money. Probably a Beatles song. I couldn't pick anyone. I'm a big George Harrison fan,
What song do you most enjoy playing?
It depends. I like playing the instrumental that James taught us called Only the Young. Beautiful melody. It allows I like when the other band members get to stretch out and play, because I like listening more than playing. I've heard myself play enough. I want to hear, you get a great player like Glenn Fukunaga. You just want to,
right.
Yeah, that's what I want to listen to. Or Buck Allen, Donnie Wynn playing the beautiful drums, or, Mike Buck or Steve Dorr. You just want to hear other people go like, yeah, that's pretty darn cool.
And so as our parting question, what advice would you give to musicians coming up now?
Now I couldn't begin to give it any advice, because it's a whole new world with COVID, with the venues being almost forced to close down because nobody's coming to their help. I hope there's some help coming from the government or somewhere. But I was talking to my brother about this back when disco knocked everybody out, because everybody's going to see disco. You could still go and play a gig. You wouldn't make any money or have any people there, but they weren't like mowing the clubs down for big condos or closing them because of the COVID. So my advice would be to keep doing it, keep doing what you believe in, because Austin will always find a way. Austin's going to find a way to come through this, and probably better than anybody else in the country, because they always have.
Right.
I mean, whatever has been thrown in Austin's way, the musicians have found a way to keep doing it, and doing it at a high level. So I've been very honored and humbled to be part of that for so long, that it just, it'll come out all right. It might not be like it was, but nothing is.
Right. That's the thing people don't always realize, is that things change. And if you're not willing to change with them, you get left behind. And you can be steamrolled by change, but that's why you have to be able to adapt to whatever comes your way.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I do agree. I think that probably Austin is better suited to that than most places in the country.
Totally agree with that. Yeah, like I said, we'll figure it out. It might take a while.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be, might not be what you want.
Our doors will be open. And
Amen.
Casper will be on that stage again.
Oh, my honor and pleasure. And I got to say, on a special day, you know, of Nick Curran's birthday,
Yep.
Sarah Brown's birthday, when Ronnie passed too, great Continental people, you know, we got to remember so many people with Continental history and just remember them all.
Yep. Indeed. And we will all see each other again, hopefully sooner than later.
Yes. And my best to Steve, because Steve, I mean, through all these years, he's made it all happen. Whatever, I've never seen him raise his voice, have a cross word with anybody in all these years.
Yeah.
And he's been so good to me. I mean, like, I've had three different residencies on 3 different days, and he still stuck with me and believed in me. You know, it's like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, you got shuffled around a little bit, but.
But yeah, thank you, Steve, for all you do for all of us, and I look forward to seeing you and being part of the continuation of the legacy.
Amen. And thanks, y'all, for tuning in. And I will, in fact, give you the links. I think, I don't know if I can access them right now. I think I can. And I can put it right up on the screen for you, right there. And you're able to Venmo or PayPal me directly to help me pay for the Zoom Pro that I had to upgrade to.
Well, you're a pro.
Well, I'm learning. I'll tell you that. I'm learning this week by week.
Well, I'm honored to be part of it.
There's the links for the employees for both the tip jars and for the merchandise. So thank you so much, Casper. I love you to pieces, and I can't wait till we can see each other in person.
Amen. I love you, Diane. Thank you so much. My wife Nancy's waving, saying hi.
Oh,
she loves you.
Hi, Nancy.
We love you and can't wait to see you and hug you again.
I can't wait either. And thanks, y'all, for joining us. We're so glad to have you here. This video will be uploaded to our Facebook pages and to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/C Continental, C Confidential, ATX. And you can find all of the Continental Live sessions there. And we hope to see you next week. Who do I have next week?
Dave Alvin, Brother Dave.
Dave Alvin.
Hey, give him my love.
Alvin.
Yes. Give him my love.
I'll do that, honey. Y'all take care.
Love y'all.